As of Genshin Impact's anniversary, I have played the game for 352 days, experiencing most of its events and quests in the process. At its best, Genshin Impact is a free-to-play, single-player open-world RPG with beautiful environments and landscapes to explore. Even just walking into different cities, you get a sense that each corner of this world has its unique culture and history. Be it running in the fields fighting monsters, exploring dungeons, fighting bosses, or just simply chilling in the city, the music somehow always manages to capture just the right emotion in the moment. The world of Genshin does have a lot of thought behind it. Be it the layers of meanings behind the names of the continents, or how the basic enemies have a language and culture on their own that you can discover, or the way that NPCs contribute to the atmosphere of the region with their mannerisms. All this make the world feel tangible. I like Genshin Impact, but I don't actually like playing it. It would seem unreasonable to say that I have played for about a year, even creating a little bit of content for the game, and then to say that I don't like it. It's not that I had no enjoyment from Genshin. Genshin is at its best when you are allowed to simply explore and discover things on your own. And because the difficulty isn't high, it becomes very easy to just open the launcher and chill. Unlike other games where you feel like there might be more at stake or that you have to start to get good, Genshin just feels very idyllic. And if that is all Genshin was, it would have been great. I enjoyed Genshin as a program on my computer containing the artistic assets of a world that I can explore. A walking simulator of sorts. But as a game, I don't think Genshin was designed to be fun. And I don't think I'm alone in thinking this way.
And I'm burnt out, guys. I'm so burnt out. I'm so bored. It cannot be healthy mentally.
There is nothing to do. Because at the end of the day, I think my biggest problem with this game comes down to purpose. And that is there is no purpose to Genshin Impact.
The game is just not fun for me anymore. And it's not safe for my well-being. Like, it's so unhealthy for me to playing this game. Like, every time I want a character, of course I'm gonna expect not getting it. I end up spending money that's supposed to be my allowance. Like, bro, like that shit, that's gonna ruin my life.
The core of this problem lies in the question, what exactly is Genshin Impact? Many people say that this is a Breath of the Wild clone, but to me this statement clearly ignores the entire genre of JRPGs. This game also looks like Breath of the Wild. It has grass, a blue sky, a cartoonish color palette, and a western fantasy feel to it. So does this, and this, and this. If you squint hard enough, even the Windows background looks like Breath of the Wild. This aesthetic is really popular in JRPGs. As for mechanics, other videos have already directly compared the two. The consensus seems to be that Genshin did draw some very revolutionary exploration mechanics like climbing, gliding, and stamina. But Breath of the Wild system is much more in-depth and gives you a lot more creative freedom that ultimately this too feels like different games. If anything, this comparison is probably intentional marketing by Genshin's developer MiHoYo, because the first trailer for Genshin is nearly identical to the Breath of the Wild trailer.
Open your eyes.
If you're into conspiracy theories, there is even a theory that the developer MiHoYo deliberately wanted negative publicity. The idea is that being accused as a copycat gives attention, but since the game by itself has enough merits, negative sentiments should be washed away by the positive ones generated by people actually trying the game. I'm sure that in practice this worked in favor of MiHoYo. Before this, nobody even knew about this Chinese developer, but I don't think anybody can say for sure that they engineered the negative publicity. To me, this comparison is a statement to the influence of Breath of the Wild and how much recency bias people tend to have. Like how everybody now say that every game is like Dark Souls, or that something is as difficult as Dark Souls, even though medieval dark fantasy RPGs and difficult games were already a thing before. And to go back to the question, this means Genshin is a JRPG, right? Yes, I know it's made by a Chinese company, I mean it in the genre sense. Yes and no. Genshin as a game is suffering from a major identity crisis because while being a JRPG, it is also an MMO without the multiplayer part. It is also an open world game, but the world isn't completed and so isn't really open. And while being a PC and console game, it is also a mobile game. This unholy combination basically takes the best and worst aspects of everything Genshin is trying to emulate. Because it simultaneously wants to be a single player JRPG and an MMO, it suddenly becomes twice as grindy. You can farm equipment just like an MMO, but because it's single player you can't actually trade away equipment you can't use. If your character dies in the middle of combat and you want to revive them using an item, the game doesn't pause or allow you to have a default revive item because this has multiplayer elements and you don't pause multiplayer games. You are free to explore wherever you want, but only in the order they want and tell you to, whether that be time-gated events or by the release of regions. You are free to play the game on PC, but because it is also a mobile game, you are subjected to similar limitations. You are forced to use auto-aim because, well, that's what mobile players use. It doesn't matter how many new mechanics they introduce, like an item that gives you a buff, or food that you can use in battles, or a lens that allow you to see spiritual objects. They all use the same button. Again, because this is a mobile game, and the mobile screen only allows so much screen clutter. But it is technically also a PC game, so you can't even experience Genshin at its best on mobile. Personally, I only played about 1 hour on mobile, so my opinion may not be the most accurate. My phone is a Huawei P30 Pro, a flagship phone released 2 years ago. In order to play Genshin Impact somewhat smoothly, I had to play on low settings, and my phone heats up real quick. Plus, I'm guessing most people don't just have a powerful phone lying around, or upgrade every year. And according to some cherry-picked threads on Reddit, when people ask if playing on mobile is not supposed to feel good, you get comments like, you get used to it, just get a new character, just use other characters so you don't have to aim. The characters. Did I mention that above all that, Genshin is a gacha game? If you don't know what that is, gacha games are the digital equivalent of the gachapon machines, where you insert money to get random pieces of toys. People not familiar with these machines can just imagine trading card games, except instead of buying a booster pack, you can just buy a single random card. In gacha games, instead of getting a random toy or card, you get a PNG of an anime waifu or husbando. In Genshin, you get a 3D model of an anime waifu or husbando, which I have to point out that for whatever reason, the same archetype of characters like tall males or tall females have the same height. Typically, players get a digital currency, Primogems in the case of Genshin as they play the game, usually by completing quests, exploring the world, participating in events, or simply buying them straight from the shop. This digital currency can then be exchanged for a chance to roll or pull for randomized characters or items. Since free-to-play players only get a limited amount of Primogems and because of the randomized manner for obtaining characters, it becomes difficult to get specific characters they want. This in turn incentivizes players to spend money in the shop to pull for their waifus and husbandos. It also pressures players to continue playing the game so they can accumulate Primogems. In theory, as applied to games like Genshin Impact where the game is incomplete, this doesn't sound like a bad idea. Game developers can release content as they finish creating it while not worrying too much about releasing a finished product only to bomb and fail. Richer people, or whales, can also fund the game more than others, serving as a pay-as-you-like model, sort of like Patreon or crowdfunding where you have tiers, except with more gambling involved. This is just an analogy. Content creators, please don't actually start adding gacha elements to your monetization. And because Genshin wants to stay playable until all regions are fully released, this also somewhat solves the problem of mobile optimization, since in 5 years it's likely that most mobile users will have more powerful phones. Genshin Impact as a single-player JRPG is also relatively easy, and even though you can only play the game online, there aren't any competitive aspects. It's not necessary to pull for characters to progress the game, and it is always possible to lower the difficulty. What the gacha does ruin is the immersion, since canonically, the only travel companion you have throughout your journey is Paimon, who is not a combatant. Adding the fact that you can also obtain characters before actually meeting them in-game, the gacha essentially ignores the narrative of the game to give you a roster of playable characters, with up to 4 different characters in your party. Unlike most other JRPGs where other party members are usually controlled by the AI, Genshin instead allows you to shape-shift into other characters to chain your combos. Something I think is done because of mobile phone limitations, but it does make combat somewhat unique. From this perspective, the gacha system essentially forces a non-canon DLC to the game. Gacha as a standalone monetization method consisting only of the ability to roll for random non-canon characters isn't exactly problematic. What is problematic is that modern gacha games follow a game design template relying on statistics and human psychology to milk as much money out of players as possible, essentially operating like unregulated casinos. A template that, as the CEO of Tribe Flame, another mobile game developer, puts, whale hunting.
It's Let's Go Whaling. It is about a summary of a huge bunch of behavioral psychology. So the tricks on how to monetize a game well. Some of you will probably be slightly shocked by all the tricks I have listed here, but I'll leave the morality of it out of the talk. We can discuss it if we have time later.
And I do actually mean that psychologists or people who have studied psychology are influencing the way that games are created. Here's an article by the American Psychological Association on an article published in 2012. It says here that a psychologist with a PhD now gets paid to play video games as a user research lead at Microsoft Studios. Companies are turning to psychologists for help analyzing data and making sure that the products are as effective as they can be. Then we scroll down to another quote by another PhD, this time working in Valve. The application of psychological principles to game design is still in its infancy, so the opportunity is present to be at the forefront of a new discipline. The role for psychologists is user research, which largely entails testing whether players experience games the way companies intended. Now, this sounds like a good thing, right? Developers can theoretically take out the unfun parts in games and make sure that players get the best experience. But if we scroll down further to the last section, we see what this is really about. The work is fast-paced and a shock to academics accustomed to conducting research slowly and carefully. If you really enjoy academics, don't go into game design. Nobody cares about your smart idea. They care about whether something is going to help the game sell a lot. So in the end, it's not about making games more fun, it's about making people spend more without careful thought about the consequences. 9 years later, if we search user research MiHoYo on LinkedIn, we can find profiles like this one. Someone who had a Bachelor of Science for Life Sciences and finished the Neurobiology and Cognitive Science program, who later worked for MiHoYo as a game producer, in which the person increased active user pay rate over 30% through new payment channels integration and a series of marketing campaigns. Or this one, Bachelor in Psychology and a Master's in Organizational and Social Psychology. Currently working in MiHoYo in user operations, of which their role is the acquisition of high-value players and to create word of mouth. So we do know that MiHoYo at least values people who understand psychology. And the notable achievements aren't things like enhancing player experience or having created a more compelling game based on psychological principles. It's things like pay rate and high value. In other words, it's all about money. Obviously, they don't want you to know that. In a casino, chips are often used in place of money because they create a mental separation between real money and chips. Because it's harder for the brain to associate a fake currency with real money while playing the game, people often gamble more as they stop thinking of what they really spent.
We don't realize that what we are losing is actually real life money.
I remember I spent so much. I had like zero in my bank account. I had to like borrow money from like my boyfriend then to like eat.
In Genshin, I have mentioned Primogems, but it's not just one currency. Let's assume that you want to buy some digital currency. There's obviously the classic trick of adjusting the price upwards then putting a discount plaster. So the quote-unquote discounted price is at the original price they were going to sell for anyway, and that the price is 1 cent off a round number just so that your brain has to make additional calculations to understand the price. But you realize these are not Primogems. These are Genesis crystals, which needs to be converted into Primogems before wishing. Primogems then need to be converted into Acquaint or Intertwined Fates in order to roll or wish for your characters. Then you get Star Glitters and Stardust from wishing, which you can then recycle into more Acquaint or Intertwined Fates. Confusion is exactly what they want you to feel. All these multiple currencies exist just so that you have no idea how much one roll actually costs. Then there's a subtle trick that requires some math. One wish in Genshin requires 160 Primogems. This means that it doesn't matter what quantity of crystals you want to buy, you'll always be just short of one more roll. The largest top up here gives you 6,480 crystals, translating to 40.5 rolls, or 81 rolls if you bought it for the first time. And guess how many characters that gives you? Well, every 10 rolls you get a 4-star guaranteed, and 90 rolls in this game guarantees you a 5-star character, which is the highest rarity in this game. But you don't have a choice of which 5-star you get. This basically means even if you buy all the crystals and got all the bonus here for 163.5 rolls, there is still a chance you won't get the character on the banner. That's 201 USD we're talking about. And what exactly is one 5-star character? With the amount of Genshin guides out there, you would think maybe there is a lot to a character, but it really isn't a lot. Each character has your basic attack animations and you have passives called talents that give various bonuses. But every character really only have 2 usable skills, 1 elemental skill and 1 elemental burst. There are no skill trees that give you additional skills with unique animations, no change in the way you combo your character skills from level 1 up to level 90, and no unique combo attacks with your party members. Just for the additional kick in the nuts, each character has up to 6 constellations that you can upgrade to get more passive bonuses, which you get by getting the characters again. Someone tried maxing out a character called Venti and it costed him $2,400. Keep in mind that it doesn't matter if you max out the character, your character will always only have 2 skills. The only thing that really changes is the number that appears on the screen. It's almost like you're not playing a game, you're playing an Excel sheet. Just $200 can buy me Hades at $22, Tales of Arise at $80, The Witcher 3 is $63, and that still leaves me $37 to buy Dawn Stuff to get at $15, another $15 for Stardew Valley, and I still have change left before accounting for exchange rate differences and sales. If I'm not spending it on games, it could be 2 weeks of groceries for me or at least 5 meals in a restaurant. Logically, it's hard to imagine someone forking out $200 just to get one character. But once you understand how much of a monkey brain we have, it's actually quite simple. You can look up Skinner box and operant conditioning for the full explanation, but here's an excerpt from the book Hooked: How Companies Create Habit-Forming Products that explains why people like getting random characters. Research shows that the levels of the neurotransmitter dopamine surge when the brain is expecting a reward. Introducing variability multiplies this effect, creating a focus state which suppresses the areas of the brain associated with judgment and reason, while activating the parts associated with wanting and desire. Although classic examples include slot machines and lotteries, variable rewards are prevalent in many other habit-forming products. In simple terms, this basically means that compared to getting a fixed set of characters like say in a normal JRPG, getting random characters is more fun and addicting to your brain. Think of how you can't stop browsing Reddit or Instagram because you keep seeing different posts. It's the same principle, just applied in a game context. Of course, you're not really paying MiHoYo $200 just for one character. You're paying $200 or whatever price you want for the entire experience that is Genshin Impact. There is also the argument that game developers should be paid more, or that games should be more expensive as games become more fulfilling experiences that are increasingly harder to make. Just keep in mind that free-to-play doesn't mean that the game makes little money or that the game has poor production values. Many MMORPGs actually transitioned to a free-to-play model and ended up increasing the active player base and multiplied their revenues. An indie studio like Klei Entertainment, which produced games like Mark of the Ninja and Dawn Stuff together, has maybe about 100 employees, while From Software, which developed Dark Souls and Sekiro, has 332 employees. Turns out, free-to-play is a model that has potential to make a lot of money, because MiHoYo has a whopping 3,900 employees. This assumes that more employees means more earnings, but I think we have all heard about Genshin Impact earning $2 billion in the first year just from mobile purchases. Genshin Impact also had an initial budget of $100 million, though I think what many people fail to mention is that this figure includes the development and the marketing cost. My personal bias says that MiHoYo probably spends more on marketing compared to other big budget games, but only MiHoYo really knows what this proportion is. To be fair, I do think that Genshin Impact has the makings of a game potentially worth paying hundreds of dollars for. The 20 or so hours of meaningful exploration manages to capture the joy of discovery quite unlike other games. And it's pretty fun following the breadcrumb trails to understand more about the world's lore and characters. The artistic assets in this game are so good that people quickly become attached to the characters in a game, going so far to do weird rituals when rolling for them. But beyond the 20 hours, my experience playing Genshin quickly devolved into one full of frustration as much of the game's lack of polish and clunk became more obvious. Like having no lock-on mechanic while having one of the worst auto-aim systems in games I've played, using certain elemental bursts don't reset your camera, how swords in the game feel like a bat with the amount of knockback instead of having clean slashes, nearly every single enemy having some kind of ability to become invulnerable to waste your time, not being able to switch elements without going to a statue for the main character despite being the canon ability. Getting frozen forces you to spam the jump button even though attack is more intuitive, so you always perform a jump you don't want to make after being unfrozen. Being unable to climb certain objects so you are forced to use a ranged character, enemies randomly resetting aggro and going back to full health, enemies being completely immune to certain elements or collectible objects requiring specific elements so you feel like the game is forcing you to use certain characters, equipment having no common and logical sorting methods, wooden shoes being literally invincible, this stupid lizard, and I haven't even gotten into co-op or even more specific stuff. Although it is possible that the above will get fixed in the future considering that the game will probably continue on for the next 5 years, MiHoYo has generally been slow with unclunking. Many players seem to agree that Genshin is a good game but bad gacha. While I see what they mean, this viewpoint ignores the fact that the game is designed around the gacha elements. To illustrate, let's talk about the 9 Pillars quest, which requires you to collect 9 stones of remembrance. The stone which, according to its text, contains the memories of an ancient war. Tell you what, the world that Genshin takes place in is one shaped by wars centuries and millennials before. Hints of these wars was sparsely given in reference in your travels, but it was never explicitly explained in the story. The 9 Pillars was meant to be the final side quest of the region of Liyue. These 9 stones could only be obtained by essentially completing the exploration of the entire second region. In pursuing that 100% exploration, you would have most definitely stumbled on Cuijie Slope. Unlike the bright landscapes which evoke feelings of nostalgia, Cuijie Slope is distinctively different from the rest of Liyue. The sky darkens as you approach the area, music fading to reveal a somber, ominous hum. Sounds of your footsteps gradually become salient as the sinister air starts to hit you. The unwelcoming geography looms behind your shoulders, and you feel like the land itself might just close in on you. You can't help but feel alone. A gate stands in front of you, archaeologically alien, which you might deduce to be from a long bygone era. 9 pillars we raise here to suppress conflict, that we may never again raise armies against each other, reads the inscription. You can only wonder what lies await as you place each stone into its rightful place in the pillars. Each time, the pillar reverberates with such force that it sends you flying, crackling to reveal its true form with a soft golden glow. Each time, the gate trembles as you get closer to unlocking the region's secrets. When you finally open the ruins, you walk in to find a bug. No, not the spider. Spiders aren't even insects in the first place. You find a boss fight that is bugged. You're supposed to destroy those rocks that would give the boss a buff, making it nearly impossible to kill. But in my case, it bugged out, and I couldn't destroy the rock. Anyway, forcefully restarting the fight and easily cleaning up without the bug, the hidden secret of the temple is 2 chests containing 5 Primogems, some garbage, and a Dao Ring. Before we could ponder the significance of the Dao Ring, we noticed the inscription that reads, "Oh, you who read this tablet, claim the treasure that lies within and bring peace to Liyue." Naturally, bringing peace to Liyue means that we sell the Dao Ring for 200,000 Mora. You can get 240,000 Mora from clearing these ley lines 4 times. Leveling a character from level 20 to level 40 uses 116,000 Mora. This is like finding the menorah from Second Temple and selling it for $5 to buy a McDonald's. There was so much going for the exploration, only to just kaput into nothing in the end. Disappointment is a running theme for Genshin, as I now point you to another quest. In the world of Genshin Impact, there is an archipelago that is non-existent on the world map. This archipelago is enveloped by storms and dense fog, and to access this island you have to travel on the back of a dragon that you happen to befriend before. Upon activating various mysterious devices, you discover that these islands were actually mountains, as the landscape shifted to reveal its full form. Travelling from mountain to mountain, no civilization could be found. Only murals and voices recorded in conches were left behind. These murals and voices tell a story of civilization starting from the first castaways who chanced onto the islands many years ago. Just as it was nearly impossible to enter the archipelago in the first place, the first islanders found it impossible to escape the islands, leaving them no choice but to make this their new home. After multiple generations passed, more castaways found their way onto the islands. Given time and having more modern knowledge, these castaways managed to solve certain mysteries of the archipelago's geography, finding a way to finally escape the archipelago. Perhaps motivated by the world away on the islands, or perhaps realizing that rising tides have made the islands no longer habitable, native islanders were finally persuaded to leave. It is unknown if they succeeded. One of the stories specifically mentioned a family heirloom that was passed from at least 6 generations before, locked behind a password hidden in a nursery rhyme. In the face of inevitable doom from the rising tides, the descendant had been forced to leave it behind. When I finally found it, this family heirloom turned out to be 40 Primo Gems, 20,000 Mora, a 4-star Berserker artifact, and 4 Mystic Ores. To recap, we had traversed continents, which is only made possible because we happened to befriend a god who had a dragon as a friend, altered the landscape, explored several dangerous islands, and uncovered generations of history, only to once again find garbage. Beyond this, there is also no continuation of the history or further build up to the same questline. In the context of the game Genshin Impact, the purpose of every questline or event are to gather mere fodder for a little bit of EXP for your waifus. This is the game. The game Genshin Impact is telling you that the real treasure was the waifus you found along the way. There aren't any satisfying conclusion to the quests because that's gacha design. The rewards and revelations in the world can't be too good or reveal too much of the story because you don't want players to feel like the game is completed. You don't want players to feel like they've finished a good storybook and can finally stop. You want them to be stuck thinking, wait, that can't be it, there must be more.
But why games are addictive is actually the denial of reward. So what makes a game addictive is not winning, but the fact that you don't always win. So there's the mesolimbic circuit in the brain, which sort of governs this, and the main neurotransmitter is dopamine. And so that's like behavioral reinforcement, and the denial of reward strongly stimulates that system. It's also why gambling is so addictive, because you don't always win, right? So the random reinforcement schedule is more addicting than the consistent reinforcement schedule.
You have to keep them logging in for a long time for player retention. Also, make sure the real exclusive rewards are in the gacha system. I also have to mention that, aside from recorded gameplay footage and the memories of players who have played this event, the archipelago I just described no longer exists. It's removed from the game because it's event exclusive. You can't visit this island any longer. You can't go back to read or listen to the contrast anymore. If you had missed the event simply because you were busy doing something else, or had another game that you wanted to play, it's no longer there for you. And if you thought that the main story of Genshin Impact would be spared from gacha hell, you'd be wrong. You see, character banners in Genshin are time limited and rotate every 40 days or so, often revealing new characters in the process. It's a part of the gacha model since new characters attract people to go into the game to roll. As for why, well, all you have to do is search Genshin Impact in Reddit while turning off Save Search.
It's called hentai, and it's art.
Now let's compare this with another recently released game, Tales of Arise. Well, saying that players roll for characters because of hentai may be a bit of a joke, but it's not far from the truth. One of the founders of MiHoYo described their success in monetization as paying for love, banking on gamers' affection for female characters. Time-limited banners mean that the narrative of Genshin Impact tends to be restricted by banner appearance. If the character has never appeared before in some kind of event or story quest, it's hard for people to get attached to the character and roll for them. So from a business perspective, you want the character's story arc to have some kind of conclusion before the banner ends. Otherwise, the only attraction towards a character would be the character design. The release of Inazuma, the third region in Genshin, is an example of this. Many players felt that the story for Inazuma is rushed and didn't adequately flesh out the characters, particularly that of Raiden Shogun and Kokomi, who are, as you guessed, the featured characters of the first and second banners in the patch respectively. Before going into Inazuma, players would have known that its borders were shut down. The Raiden Shogun, as the leader of Inazuma's governing body, had not only done so politically in a dictator-like fashion via the Sakoku Decree, she had also altered the environment surrounding Inazuma using her divine powers as the Electro Archon. Those who wanted to travel into or out of the nation had to navigate through persistent thunderstorms and lightning, a task impossible for most mortals. those who managed to escape, such as Atsuko. An NPC in Ryue and Kazuha, a playable character, would describe Inazuma as tense and dangerous. In particular, vision holders, or people with elemental powers, were in even greater danger. The Raiden Shogun thinks that these powers should only belong to gods like herself, and is actively seizing these visions. Kazuha is a victim of these hostile policies, having witnessed his friend's execution by the Raiden Shogun, and is currently a wanted man in Inazuma. Of course, not all in Inazuma were in favor of the Shogun's rule. A resistance army, led by the divine priestess and genius tactician Kokomi, had slowly been gathering allies. While certain members of prestigious houses oppose certain ideas of the Shogun's rule, they cannot openly do so for fear of losing political power. And most ordinary Inazumans, while not entirely satisfied with the Shogun's regime, still see her as the rightful ruler. So, that is the setting of the region of Inazuma. Quite a lot to unravel, right? And the only statistic to know that the story did not end well is the playtime it takes to reach a conclusion to this arc. For me, this took maybe 6 to 8 hours of main story playthrough. If I included a side quest and random exploration on the way, my Inazuma playtime is about 15 hours. To understand how difficult it is to resolve a plot like this, let's take a look at the Lord of the Rings runtime, which is 558 minutes for the theatrical version, or 9 hours and 18 minutes. The Lord of the Rings is a pretty classic good versus evil story, with Sauron being the main villain. For the most part, the plot is pretty straightforward. Obviously, Genshin Impact is quite different, but the overarching story for this region is the same. Main character goes on a cross-continent journey, gain allies, join the wars, have various setbacks in the journey, and finally defeat the villain. Now imagine aside from that, you add politics into the mixture, make all the characters morally grey so you can't tell who is really good or evil, and have Sauron go from almost exterminating Frodo on the first sight to going on a date with Frodo. Without going into spoilers, you know that the story won't turn out well. It's a nearly impossible task simply because there isn't enough time to resolve all the story threads they presented. And once again, the culprit for this is gacha. The gacha game model's main target player base are your busy 20 to 30 year olds who log in every day to play for 30 minutes to 1 hour. With the Raiden Shogun banner running from the 1st of September to 21st September, that only leaves about 10 hours maximum for the Raiden Shogun storyline to reach a conclusion. It doesn't matter how good or expensive the lore of Genshin Impact is. If the story isn't good, then it's a lot easier to become disinterested in the world. To go back to our comparison, The Lord of the Rings exploded in popularity after Peter Jackson's film trilogy, rather than the earlier adaptations around the 1980s. This wouldn't have happened if the Peter Jackson films didn't tell a better story using the same lore as given in the novels. For Genshin, an increasing disinterest can be seen from two things. The first being sales. Raiden Shogun had the advantage of not only superior marketing, the character was also hyped for various reasons like first waifu Archon, major antagonistic vibes, major region release, and Buba Sword. Even though her story may not be well received, her character arc still technically had a conclusion. With all these advantages, the Shogun banner was the most profitable banner thus far. On the other hand, Kokomi, the next banner character, was the worst among Genshin 5-star characters. As you can guess, the story did a huge disservice to her character as a genius tactician, and she is forever relegated to a meme.
To breathe, we must have lungs.
The increasing disinterest in Genshin can also be seen from the backlash from Genshin's anniversary. Most game journalists or influencers would say that the players are angry because of insufficient rewards. But most game journalists and influencers also don't play the game they are talking about. Any player who regularly played the game would tell you of the mounting frustrations within the game. The longer they played the game, the more likely these frustrations are present. Some of which I have covered earlier, including the lack of a satisfying payoff or reward into quests and events. Since anniversaries are usually a big event, frustrated players had looked towards the anniversary for the payoff they wanted, whether consciously or not. People aren't looking at the anniversary rewards solely as a payoff for participating in the anniversary. They were looking at the anniversary rewards as payoff for having played Genshin for a year and not receiving the payoff they expected from the game. Because aside from the unsatisfying shitty cliffhanger-ass endings for quests, events and stories, Genshin is also a game deliberately designed to waste your time and ask for a significant time investment. In a way, it is a masterclass of turning 20 hours of meaningful gameplay into 1 year of player retention. Though I said I played Genshin for 1 year, it's really more accurate to say that I had been logging into the program of Genshin Impact every day for 20 minutes doing digital chores like picking trash off a temple's roof, sweeping grass in a richer man's estate, delivering food for an understaffed restaurant, or murdering some primitive human-like life forms, all while listening to a short YouTube video in the background. If that sounds like work, that's because it is. What I just described are the daily commissions for the game Genshin Impact, quests that players do for 60 Primogems per day. And the very same players are saying that they are burnt out from quote-unquote playing the game. Burnout is something that is usually used in the work context because that is what causes people to feel exhaustion. Playing Genshin the intended way is work. The game is so effective at probing your monkey brain that you can find posts like this on Reddit. Had an existential crisis while playing today. Come on, it was just another day, doing commissions and watching the Primogems number climb, and it just hit me. What the fuck am I even doing anymore? And here's another post by someone who said they've been playing for 319 days. When they started, they haven't considered spending too much time on it because of college and other games. The strange thing is they logged in every single day religiously without even understanding why. And they don't even like this game that much. And you can see just how reconfigured people's brains are from the number of upvotes and comments. Bro, this is totally normal for gacha games. So many gacha noobs. Cool story bro, so stop, don't beg the dealer to be nicer while he slides the needle in. People have become so accustomed to games designed to waste your time that they think this is supposed to happen. So much so that they believe game designers take zero fault for making increasingly addictive mechanics. Instead, it's your fault for not having enough willpower. People don't understand that addiction isn't something you can just switch off. If you can't stop your body from feeling hungry, you can't stop your brain from producing different chemicals upon saying different things. Your brain literally changes according to the media you consume.
We don't realize that what we are losing is actually real life money.
I remember I spent so much. I had like zero in my bank account. I had to like borrow money from like my boyfriend then to like eat.
If you go on a Stop Gaming subreddit, you can also find many similar stories about people being unable to control themselves. Like this college student who spent half of his college funds without realizing. This person wanted an escape from reality and fell into the trap of the community, which encouraged spending and wailing on Genshin. Or this other person who continued playing Genshin due to FOMO and being scared of missing out on Primogems. In a depressive episode, then spends more than they wanted on a character. Even in the main Genshin Impact subreddit, you have people asking other players for advice on how to stop the gambling addiction. Here's an adult with a full-time job and a family, who initially only bought the 100 pack at the start of the game. But once Raiden Shogun was released, he started going for max constellations, and with a lucky streak, he felt like he could continue to go for other 5-star character constellations as well. And he can't help but want more. He also wrote that this post is simply a cry for help. Then another post from a self-employed person who got a good paycheck and wanted to reward themselves, bought all the bonus top-ups just to realize that they didn't really need the item. Psychological tricks exist throughout the game in Genshin, and they are also aspects that make the game worse. Like any free-to-play game, Genshin follows the hook, habit, hobby model. That is, the 3 monetization phases of a player. The hook phase is when you attract someone to actually install and try the game. All the content creators are talking about it, everybody in your social circle is playing it, and all the random advertisements are just begging you to install. Then they flood you with rewards, free rolls, characters, items, anniversary exclusives to make you feel like you have to start right now, or you'll be missing out. This is also where the 20 hours of fun for Genshin lie, and where the icebreaker deals come in as a recommended purchase. Something that looks like a good deal. Unlike the so-called normal price of $50, a Welkin Moon is only 5 and give you more Primogems per dollar spent, as long as you continue to log in. The purpose is twofold. One, to get people to start spending real money so their internal psychological barriers break down, making them more likely to spend in the future.
I get annoyed that I'm not getting it and I feel like I already wasted money, I might as well spend more to get it, which makes no sense.
In order to fully enjoy the benefits, you also have to log in every day, which gets players into the next phase, habit. Unfortunately, this is where your free trial ends. Meaningful exploration begins to slow and you start thinking about character progression. How to make your character stronger, do more damage, optimize your team composition, and expand your waifu collection. The so-called game trains you to open the program habitually. Daily quests give you 60 Primogems every day, which when combined with the Welkin Moon 90 Primogems per day is 150 Primogems, or just 10 short of 1 row. You're so close to another row. Maybe you want to open a few more chests for the Primogems, or just straight up open wallet. The free battle pass gives you rewards for completing tasks, which of course includes more roles, and they also put a reminder of what you're missing out if you haven't purchased the paid battle pass yet. Weekly bosses drop exclusive materials, but you can get their rewards only once per week, so you feel like you're missing out if you don't log in every Monday to kill them. The parametric transformer, which is refreshed only once per week, Serenity Pot, which gives you yet another currency you have to collect every few days so you can buy stuff. Expeditions, which gives you materials every 20 hours. They even have a checklist for all these things on the official HoYoLab app. Materials and items from regular play are also artificially reduced. Killing this level 88 monster gave me about 58 EXP and 200 gold. Leveling a character from level 20 to level 40 requires 578325 experience, which means I need to kill about 10,000 of them. Or I can use the experience books given out from the habitual task, which would require another 116,000 gold to use. Ascending a character or increasing the level cap of a character not only requires EXP and gold, it also requires obscure materials which I can only collect by manually walking around on rooftops, cliffs, and fields like a maniac, and killing bosses multiple times. While killing bosses for the first time tend to be, might I say, fun, doing so over and over again is rather boring. Bosses in Genshin aren't particularly difficult like say in Monster Hunter, where the repeated attempts remain challenging even with better equipment. Bosses in Genshin are really more like interactable cinematics meant to be fought once. Obstacles that you discover while traveling the world. They all have these long-ass invulnerable frames or animations that are nice to see the first time, but as you figure out the patterns, like don't use a cryo character against a boss immune to cryo, or use a specific element so the boss becomes a cakewalk, or use a shield so this particular boss does no damage, bosses become mostly a chore to go through. Game combat was designed to be simple, but the grind they encourage don't reflect this. And then you have resin, which is a stamina system usually there to prevent you from playing too much. In order to get rewards, every boss you kill requires you to use 40 resin, and domains require the use of 20. The secondary objective of this stamina system for Genshin is monetization. That's right, secondary, not primary. You can use Primogems to refuel your resin, but this is something that most players don't do unless they are whales who spend hundreds or thousands of dollars, because resin is highly inefficient in this game. The primary objective is to compel you to play the game more. Resin has a cap of 160, which regenerates at a rate of 8 minutes per resin. This means it takes 21 hours and 20 minutes to refuel. To fully maximize your resin usage, you can't log in at the same time every day because it means missing out on some resin. There is an option to condense your resin, which on paper seems like a time saver. But of course, this is merely an illusion. This requires a material that again requires more grinding, by chasing these stupid crystal flies. If your computer is even just a little bit slow, the extra loading screen time from gathering crystal flies would offset any time you would theoretically save. The game wants you to log in at least twice a day. Coupled with the artificially high material costs, you have to play more and on a regular basis if you want that character progression or waifu collection. This piece of shit program even reopens the launcher when you close the game, because fuck you for even thinking about stopping Genshin. Be it items for your character's skills or equipment called artifacts or weapon ascension materials, these all take place in boring domains with a square or circle shaped arena and a random group of monsters. And to make your life just a little bit more miserable, the enemies in the domains don't even drop anything. That's right, more unnecessary grinding. Rewards from domains are also variable, so you will never ever have a perfectly leveled character. Throughout my one entire fucking year of spending nearly all my resin, I have never encountered the perfect artifact. Because even if I did, leveling up the equipment has an additional RNG element to make sure that it doesn't become perfect. It's the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, only to repeat when new characters come out because new characters don't use existing materials. You need them from the new domains, which don't even have new gameplay because it's the same square and circle again. If you wanted reprieve from grinding, events should have been something that sounds fun. After all, in theory, with a world as ambitious as Genshin, it can create some very unique experiences with time-limited events like festivals in real life. But, as I said, Genshin is a gacha game. And the model means that there is only one reason why players would do events. Rewards for MiHoYo's good doggy, conditioned to celebrate upon hearing free limited items of Primogems. Gacha games pretty much always have some kind of event going on. It's going back to the same shit of making you feel obligated to log in, and also to make free-to-play players feel like the game is rewarding them. The unfortunate truth of keeping events running 24/7 is that most events become glorified commissions or domains, like delivering food, or go here, kill this monster, or go to this spot and kill monster, but there are special crystals that let you do more damage. Even the developers know this, and there are so many times when we have the main character go, "Not this shit again, another commission." It's like we're always just reading some employers cry for help rather than actually playing a game. If even the creators can't have fun with the game, what makes you think players will have fun? And then there are mini-games. The worst implementation being a rhythm game that is actually more difficult on lower difficulties because of how out of sync the music is. Your average minigame isn't going to be as horrendous, but still just feel clunky. Like this minigame that's basically tennis against a wall, but the lack of acceleration on the ball makes it really awkward to play. That's not to say that all Genshin events are not fun. One of the tower defense minigame turned out to be pretty fun and made good use of existing mechanics for fresh gameplay. And the most memorable event was the temporary archipelago that you can explore. But if you're only interested in the non-gacha parts of Genshin, then Primogems and the gacha shouldn't really matter to you. So the solution is to skip all the events and ignore the useless rewards, right? Nope. Some events have small sins or extra bit of lore pertaining to important characters that seem like they should be part of the main story. But as it turns out, those sins are not permanent additions and are limited to the event. As you can guess again, that's part of the gacha game model. It's all compiling on that fear of missing out on time-limited events or on the rewards that events give you. But sometimes the game itself isn't persuasive enough, and there's still one more layer to building the FOMO.
Okay, so a lot of people have been feeling burnt out playing Genshin Impact, especially those who have been playing for over a year now, and with the current state that Genshin Impact is in, content being dry and stale, there basically is no content. A lot of people are quitting, and a lot of people are having troubles staying motivated to continue logging in. So I'm going to give you guys a list and explain why this motivates me and stuff like that, and hopefully that kind of reignites a spark for you in Genshin Impact. If I wake up and I know that, here we go, I have to farm my artifacts, and I have to like my daily artifacts, and I have to like farm my crystals. You know, you have to log in every single day, do your daily commissions. That can get kind of tedious. I'll make sure I do my daily commissions. I'll make sure I go around, farm my crystals, and then hit up my 1-star daily artifacts. Once I get all the work stuff out of the way first, then I get a chance to go ahead and play, do the event, but I'll make sure that, hey, do I need to do the event today? Probably not. I can do like part of it, half of it, save some for tomorrow, you know? Try to go out of your comfort zone a little bit. I know a lot of people hate doing the Spiral Abyss because it's not really fun for them or anything like that. There's really not that much content in the game to play for 2 to 3 hours a day. And if I wasn't streaming it live with an audience, I probably wouldn't play as long as I do. Just having some background noise with you does make the playing more bearable in my experience.
In case you don't know what I just showed you, this is a streamer literally begging viewers to continue playing Genshin Impact daily so that he can continue to get revenue from views, even though he just listed the reasons why the game feels like work and isn't fun to play. Now, I don't know about you. I played Genshin Impact because I thought it would be fun, not because I'm some kind of crypto mining machine for MiHoYo coin. But maybe I'm the odd one out here because this video has 4.3 thousand likes and only 300 dislikes. I guess in 2021, games are not meant to be fun anymore. Streamers like this, as with other people who have considered doing things like telling friends about the game, making fan art, making videos or streaming, have entered the next phase in the hook habit hobby model. Hobby. Well, I suppose the terminology might be a bit outdated, considering that the streamer I showed you had earned 6 figures in a year from creating Genshin content just from Twitch. This is literally his job. Players in the hobby/job phase of the game are your hardcore fans and the ones most likely to wail or test the limits of progression in the game. That's why they are also the ones most likely to post stuff about Genshin. The role of the game developer here is to make them feel like the game is worth their time and money, and to increase their numbers by having these streamer recruitment events and giving out Primogems to them. Hobby/job players aren't really about making useful, informative or entertaining content from the game though. It is to make other players unhappy with the way they are currently enjoying the game. Whether it is about not doing enough damage, not having enough waifus, not having enough Primogems, not strong enough artifacts, not enough resin, not enough limited characters, not enough limited weapons, not enough constellations, not enough. It's no coincidence that Genshin videos, which I struggle to call content, are among the worst of any games I have watched before. Genshin videos are about manufacturing this content so that other players watching would spend money or more time on the game. You need this character. Everything about everything in this game is god tier, amazing, must know, biggest ever, unbelievable, broken, top tier. Searching a character guide, we are immediately greeted by hyper, big PP damage numbers. She's crazy, broken, illegal, amazing. To go all boomer on you, back in my days, gaming content weren't all just clickbait like this. And by back in my days, I mean 10 months ago. Because searching for a character guide for another ongoing gacha game, Arknights, we get more reasonable videos like is this character overhyped? Showcase, how to clear this stage with Thorns, showcase of max level Thorns. I don't play Final Fantasy XIV, but searching Final Fantasy XIV Paladin guide also comes with less clickbaity results. What makes this contentment factories even more problematic is in the manner they present the game. Nearly all character guides don't mention that they are written with the Spiral Abyss in mind, which is this stupid square on the entire map of Genshin Impact. And in this stupid square, you go into this circle thing to fight monsters in a circle for rewards. This arena is essentially designed for whales to throw all their big PP damage at, and for free-to-play players, another source of primogems and a way to challenge themselves. The most difficult enemies in the Abyss are not only over-leveled, but there is also a timer for the rewards, making this a DPS check, which is nothing wrong by itself, but put in the context of Genshin Guides, problems start to arise. For one, most players play Genshin Impact because of this. Not this one stupid square. Remember when Genshin was promoted as Anime Breath of the Wild? In my 1 year of play, I've only fully completed the Spiral Abyss twice. As with many things in Genshin, a few times is fun. More than that, and it becomes a chore. And when you start to use optimized builds for the hardest, meant to be for whales content in the normal game, this happens.
Sayonara. Sayonara.
This boss is supposed to be hard. Aside from the Abyss, the only part where more damage mattered is basically nowhere. The most useful part of having more damage is for clearing domains. And even then, optimizing for damage is a difference of clearing in 1 minute and 1 minute and 20 seconds. With domains being chores for materials, you really have to wonder if you're actually playing a game or investing in a more efficient vacuum cleaner. When Inazuma was released, I wasn't even excited for exploration anymore because everything became a joke. Enemies are no longer threatening, and when you reach new areas there's little sense of accomplishment. Discovering a new boss becomes a matter of waiting for their bullshit invulnerable periods to end. It's like MiHoYo realized players are doing too much damage, so they designed fights this way to make sure that epic fights don't end in 2 seconds.
But fat boy, why not just use new, under-leveled characters?
You see, that's what I thought when I busted out my under-leveled Electro Traveler for the immersion points. Except every piece of shit you encountered has increased resistance to Electro or complete immunity. Oh, what's that? A new character you want to use? The materials to level up this dude is located all the way here, where I haven't even explored. If you're a new player and you're still stuck over here, MiHoYo is telling you that you can go suck the D. And Genshin video makers will encourage you to go and suck that D. Because Genshin Impact is not about having fun, but about having farm. And because these videos are popular, your regular players see these high view count videos as credible and the correct way to play. When your largest video makers are constantly pushing these ideas, it's no wonder that the fanbase is said to be toxic. Every time a new character is released, the community goes into a rage about how the DPS isn't high enough, instead of asking whether the character is fun and unique to play. In the subreddit for the objectively worst character in the game, the most upvoted post of all time is about being kicked for using a character in co-op. Keep in mind that Genshin isn't remotely competitive. The Spiral Abyss meta shouldn't matter at all, but farming and DPS is all that matters. That guy with hundreds of thousands of subs said so small number on screen must be kicked. Character guides also completely miss the point that Genshin's combat system is revolved around playing 4 characters at the same time. Though to be fair, part of the blame lies with MiHoYo, who themselves also don't seem to know what to do with the combat and elemental system. Like this lawyer character. Every time she attacks, she gains a Chinese seal, and then a charge attack stamps the seal. That certainly sounds interesting. Maybe it's something that restricts movement. You know, full weight of the law, burden of proof, 绳之以法，法往难逃. it could certainly result in interesting combos.
Yanfei consumes Scarlet Seals with a charged attack. Each Scarlet Seal will increase Yanfei's pyro damage bonus for a set period.
And nope, just more damage. Or this character turns into Sonic the Hedgehog. Holy shit! Imagine the combos possible with a Burning Tornado of Doom or with the ability to teleport around. Hoya! Wait, where's the knockback? And the spin is also cancelled by jumping. You get randomly stuck on things, and you also can't switch characters while in mid-air.
Not to mention, since Swirls got buffed back in 1.6 update, you can really feel the damage when rolling around.
As each of Sayu's swirls are doing around 7,000 to 14,000 damage to each of these samurai. On top of all this, Sayu is shredding pyro resistance by 40% for Xiangling's Pyronado.
7,000 to 14,000 damage. You can really feel the damage when rolling around.
Okay guys, my bad for getting excited. I forgot that the only useful mechanic in this game is more damage. Fun combat only exists in cutscenes. Limited design is consistent throughout Genshin, and it's also what causes combat to be brain dead. Most of your time is going to be ability spamming by pressing Q and E, and character swapping for more spam, with normal attacks feeling the downtime. Even new characters feel dull, because you're doing the same thing. The only thing that's different is the number on the screen and the animation. Not that this matters much to the vacuum cleaner salesman. A new artifact that increases cleaning speed by 20%? Well, time to tell viewers that it is broken and farm for some MiHoYo coin. A character hasn't even released yet? No problemo. Time to make a prediction video. One more video on if you should summon the character, one video talking about official release, one video talking about the best weapon, one video asking again if you should summon the character because fuck it, people have goldfish memory. I don't think I need to say anything about the clickbait channels where the videos provide even less value. Those don't even deserve criticism. But why would people do this? Make videos for a shitty product? Don't they have better content to make? Other games to play? Money. For whatever reason, which may or may not be related to the 100 million initial budget MiHoYo has, Genshin is heavily promoted by the algorithms. My non-Genshin videos gets a few hundred views, but once I started posting some Genshin videos, kaboom! 2,000, 3,000, 6,000 views. Oh, look at this guy, few thousand views from Shokugeki no Soma recipes. Then Genshin, and it's a few 100,000. Go back to Shokugeki, 5,500. Or this one, random gacha games, tens of thousands of views. But Genshin Impact, millions of views. That's why many video makers who did not have many views transitioned into making Genshin videos, and then stayed in Genshin. As for why people continue to watch clickbait content that's often too long and unproductive, I think the reason is simple. This is purely speculation on my part, since the information for Genshin player ages isn't public. But popular videos are similar to Fortnite and Minecraft videos, which are aimed at children. And characters like Ningguang, Beidou, and Jin are called mummies, even though they are speculated to be late 20s at most. Most Genshin players are likely to be children and teenagers who have too much free time on their hands. That's right, I ranted about a game made for children for 1 hour. Please send help. I think that's enough ranting for now. I'll leave you to decide whether inducing FOMO and encouraging gambling in children as a career is ethical or not. Although it may not look like it, I don't think Genshin Impact is a terrible game. The main problem is that playing this game has too high of a price to pay in the currency of time. It is why there is a quote-unquote correct or most enjoyable way to play the game. This basically involves you only playing the main story quests, rarely engaging in a gacha system, ignoring all social media including YouTube, Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, Twitch, the marketing, and simply explore the world on your own pace, and ignoring the min-maxing mechanics like artifacts and equipment. If the game were to be only 30 hours, by removing all gacha-related design elements, the simple combat system and addicting exploration would have made Genshin Impact a great game. Sadly, that day may never come, since the foundation of MiHoYo's success since its days as a 3-man team had always been gacha. MiHoYo also isn't really a game company, but a tech company disguised as an ACG company. Animation, comic, and game. If you still want to play Genshin Impact, my advice is to either wait 3 years or shut off your monkey brain. Reject monkey. Return to human. Evolve to crab.